Here we are, learning plan 4B, and we are still in the evoking process. And we're going to be discussing sustain talk and discord into further detail. And it's important to discuss these two because they are a normal, natural part of change and experiencing ambivalence. So we had discussed change talk in the previous learning plan, and we started talking about how to reflect those change talk statements. Now we want to discuss sustain talk and discord. I want to spend time here with resistance and discord first. So in the previous two editions of motivational interviewing in this textbook, resistance was identified as something that the client presented. It was more or less the client's fault. And so as research developed, it was understood that resistance isn't really the appropriate term to describe what clients go through when they're looking at staying in the status quo. And so discord was used instead to describe it a little bit better. And so the difference is discord is it can be a normal part of a client as they go through the change process. However, discord is more focused on the helper versus the process of change. So for instance, when you have a client that you're working with and the client may cut you off, ignores you, doesn't listen to anything that you're really saying, that used to be considered resistance. But what we found is that it's really discord because it's not necessarily an issue with the change process, but it's an issue more with the helper. And so when we work with clients that present some discord with us, it's something that we need to address. And it happens. It happens to everyone. Everyone that you work with as a helper isn't going to necessarily like you or necessarily find your style beneficial, and that's okay. We can't be all things to all people as helpers. But what we can do is address it with the client and find out where they're coming from. Because maybe there was something that was said that offended them. Maybe it's something completely out of the realm of the client-helper relationship and they just don't know how to process it or deal with it. It could be a number of things. So it's important as helpers to try and understand where the client's coming from. So if you have a client that tends to cut you off a lot or I guess doesn't really listen to anything you've got to say, you can stop the session and confront the client a little bit and say, hey, I've noticed these things. Is there something else going on that I'm not aware of, or something that we need to discuss, and go from there. So I think that's enough about Discord. What we're going to talk about is sustain talk now, and sustain talk is simply just the other side of change talk. When you're experiencing change, you're going to have statements that make you want to stay in the status quo, and that's considered sustain talk. And then you're going to have statements that reflect the client's desire to change, and those are called change talk statements. And when you come across sustain talk statements, just realize that it's normal, and you want to reflect that back and see where the client's at with that. And so it's important to understand as you work with clients, especially ones who may be referred to you against their will, such as in corrections or addiction counseling. A lot of the clients that I've worked with in the past are mandated to report to me. And so when we start discussing things, there's a lot of animosity towards the system and towards even me because of who I represent. And so it's important to discuss those things, get them out in the air, get them out in the open, and have a discussion about it, and then try and move on from there. And then if there's any resistance about actual behavior changes, we can address those as they come up as well. All right, so one of the ways that you can present sustained talk back to the client is using reflections. And I've mentioned before that I'm a big fan of using reflections. You can use what are called amplified reflections and double-sided reflections. Amplified reflections are a subset of complex reflections, so you're adding some emotion, but amplified reflections adds intensity to what the client's telling you. And so you can read about that further in your text, and I recommend that you do that because they are great to use. And the client is going to tell you right away whether or not they agree with your evaluation of the situation through amplified reflections. Another reflection that you can use is called a double-sided reflection, and that is when you present one side versus another. So for instance, if you have someone who says that I really need to quit smoking because of my health, it's affecting my health, but it's such a comfort for me. It helps me calm down. It's a stress relief. And so you can present that back by saying, on the one hand, Joe, you are comfortable with smoking. It's something that you've done for years. It's a stress relief for you. But on the other hand, you realize that it is affecting your health, and your health seems very important to you. That's a double-sided reflection. But notice something, that when I reflected that back, I started with the sustained talk statement, and then I ended on the change talk statement. And there's a reason why we do that. It's called the recency effect. So when people hear uh, statements made, they tend to focus on usually the last statement that's been made. If that's a negative statement, that's gonna kind of attach in their mind a little easier than the previous statement. So we want to frame our double-sided reflections with the negative or the sustained talk first, and then end on the positive or the change talk, because we're hoping that the client will latch on to that change talk piece, which is the last statement you've given, and give us some more information on that. Okay, and as we respond to sustained talk, we want to emphasize autonomy. We want people to feel safe in the environment so they can explore that sustained talk. We can reframe their sustained talk, which is somewhat like a reflection. Agreeing with a twist, and you can read about that a little bit further in your text. Running head start, coming alongside. So there are some things that you can work with the client on and using these responses. And they're very simple, and they each of them have their strengths and purposes. All right, so moving on then, we discuss discord and smoke alarms. When we kind of confront people about discord, there are some things that may come up. The client may try to defend their stance. They may try to blame, minimize, or justify. Squaring off, they may say some things like, it's more geared towards you as a helper. You don't care about me. Who are you to tell me what to do? Well, very confrontational, interrupting. They may make statements like, you don't understand, you're not hearing me. All right, and then disengagement, and I think we all know kind of what disengagement is probably like, where the client just kind of maybe sits there, they're not really present, they nod their head in agreement with you, they don't say much, they don't do much. And so then you have to move back in the processes to engagement and find out what's going on. All right. Okay, and then you can read about sources of discord during the 4 processes. The text really does a great job of outlining where you might see discord in the engaging process, the focusing process. evoking and planning. And I think that's important to understand, because you will encounter discord. That's just the nature of the helping field, and how you overcome that, how you work with a client on that is going to determine your success, I think, when working with clients and really professionally. Okay. And how to respond to discord: apologizing, affirming, shifting focus. Okay, these are ways that you can address or respond to discord as well, because it is about you, the helper, and so we want to minimize that as much as possible. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is evoking hope and confidence. And there's some in chapter 16 is where we start off with this. And 16.1 discusses, the box 16.1 discusses importance and confidence. And so you can use this exercise with your clients. It's important that we as helpers help support the client during this change process. We want to give the client hope and confidence that they can achieve this change, and we can do that through different ways by focusing on their strengths. We want to find out where they feel or how they feel confident about the change. How confident are they? And you can use that the strength ruler, where you can say, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can make this change? Well, I'm a 6. Oh, great, you're a 6. So why not a 3 or a 4? And that, again, reframes it for the client to focus on the positives rather than the negatives. That's what we want to do. We want to help the client see that they are capable of making this change. All right, so we want to make sure we are supporting them. We want to make sure that we're focusing on their strengths and their abilities. And all these will have an impact on their confidence. Okay, so, and then you want to make sure you're familiar with pages 219 through 221, which discusses sources of hope. So, and there are some ways that you can help instill hope in people that you work with. You can review their past successes, not failures. We don't want to bring up failures. It's important to discuss those in certain contexts, but not when you're practicing motivational interviewing and they're trying to work on making a change. And you've identified the area that they want to change, and they're building up that confidence to make that change. So review past successes. You can do some brainstorming with them. All right. You can reframe what they tell you. So a common theme is, I've tried several times before and I failed. And so you can reframe that in a way that shows that they've made the effort to try. A lot of people don't even, try to accomplish this specific goal. Right? And then how to respond to confidence talk. And confidence talk is just when people start discussing whether or not they can make the changes. And you can use ORS, your core interviewing skills, with confidence talk as well. So you can give affirmations for the past successes. You can reflect what the client is telling you and kind of reframe it. So these are all more advanced skills that take a lot of time to develop. So please do not be frustrated if this doesn't come to you right away. I've been practicing motivational interviewing for many years, and it's still something that I have to actively practice all the time. And even these skills, it's very difficult to keep all of the different processes and components, and while maintaining MI spirit and being MI consistent. It takes a lot, and it takes a lot of practice. And so the goal is for you to get an understanding and get a knowledge of some of these advanced skills so that you can start practicing them in your own professional and even personal lives. All right, so there are some ways in this chapter that you can start working with clients who express confidence, and how you can build that up. You can use open questions. Let's see, summarize the client's reasons for optimism about change. So you want to stay focused on the change. All right, so that's this learning plan, and chapters 15 and 16. And so we are getting near the end. If you have questions, please reach out to me.